was Billings put on a good show for us.
Sure, I bet.
Yeah, they're they have a pretty big parks department, lots of staff, and some interesting issues. I went to a presentation about SEPTED, crime prevention through environmental design, from the one of the officers with the police force presented, and then one of the parks maintenance guys.
And we'll call this meeting to order. So first a roll call. Mike McLeod, Alice Deshay, Julie Jackshaw, Bart Riley, here. Josh O'Neill, here. Mark Garf,
Here.
Sean Orey, Bill Daly, here. And I am Matt Steitzer. All right, at this time, we'll go to our first agenda item, Comprehensive Plan Amendment Application. An application by the Butte-Silver County Development Department to amend the official Butte-Silver Comprehensive Plan by adopting the Butte-Silver Housing Strategic Plan as an amendment to the appendix. All right, this time we'll hear a staff presentation.
Mr. Chairman, this evening I'm just going to briefly discuss the housing strategic plan and then turn over the floor to Karen Burns, Director of Community Development Department, who led the effort to draft this plan. In summary for this plan, Butte-Silver Housing Strategic Plan was finalized in January of this year, asserting a guide for housing development, redevelopment, and maintenance for existing and future building stock. Inclusive to this report are strategies to achieve housing goals to provide for affordability and also sustaining our housing stock, with the ultimate goal of providing equitable, affordable, and accessible housing in the county and region. In order to best guide future development in Butte-Silver Bow, it is essential for the comprehensive plan to align with other community plans to achieve comprehensive development of the community. Adopting the housing strategic plan into the appendix of the Butte-Silver Bow comprehensive plan would encourage alignment and cohesion of goals, planning, and implementation efforts enabled by both the housing strategic plan and the comprehensive plan. From a legal standpoint, the Montana Code Annotated states that comprehensive plans may include neighborhood plans, and neighborhood plans must be consistent with the growth policy. The housing strategic plan serves as a neighborhood plan for the neighborhoods of the Butte-Silver Bow region, and the plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan as illustrated by staff findings, which discuss each of the elements, the 7 main principles, in fact, of the vision statement, which are reflected in the comprehensive plan. We have evaluated how the housing strategic plan would enhance community character and reinforce the diverse and unique sense of place in each community throughout the county, the respect to Butte-Silver Bow's heritage while embracing change, the maintenance of access to recreational assets for residents and visitors, sustaining the affordability and equity in housing choice and access for all residents, providing economic opportunity through innovation, enhancing Butte-Silver Bow's economy by thinking outside the box, and promotion of growing wisely into the future by using what exists today to support growth and ensure a clean and healthful environment for all residents, regardless of their age, gender, economic status, or where they live in the county. Based upon our written findings, planning staff recommends approval of the comprehensive plan amendment to adopt the Butte-Silver Bow Housing Strategic Plan as an appendix of the Butte-Silver Bow Comprehensive Plan. Karen?
Do you want me to click or do you want to click? Okay, perfect, excellent. Thank you so much, Julia and members of the Planning Commission. I am Karen Burns, Director of Community Development for Butte-Silver Bow. I'm just going to go through a brief presentation about the plan. Some of you may have already seen this when it was presented to the Council of Commissioners back in January. And then I know that Mr. Garf, who is sitting in Sean Ori's seat, is familiar with the plan as well, because we did hire SCJ Alliance to do this plan with us, and it was a great experience, so I just want to say that. A few years ago, our chief executive and members of the community came together to form the Affordable Housing Committee for Butte-Silver Bow, and we established membership that included nonprofits, housing organizations, and for-profit developers, and representatives from other departments of Butte-Silver Bow and other partners in the community, including St. James Healthcare. And we came together and talked about all the different issues going on in our community and said, we need to update our housing strategic plan as one of our first goals of this committee. And so the result of it was a year-long effort to create this plan for our community. So how we went about developing the plan, we looked at two main sources or factors of information to pull from. We did a housing needs assessment for the community, and then we also did a community engagement and feedback strategy. We started this process back in early 2003, as I stated before, with SCJ Alliance as our consultant that we hired to help us. So a few key takeaways from the housing needs assessment. Butte-Silver Bow's population is projected to grow to just under 40,000 by 2040. And this we'll need to accommodate that with our housing demand. And so we are on a projected growth, and we just had an update, an economic update outlook through the Missoula Bureau of Economics and Research, held here in Butte, and our population had grown by over 3%. And that is a big jump for Butte-Silver Bow, and that's something we haven't seen in quite some time, so it's consistent with what we found in the plan as well. Some of the other key takeaways, I'm not telling you something you don't already know. The age of our housing stock is definitely something that is very notable. And Butte-Silver Bow has a lower median household income than the rest of Montana and the United States. And we have a significantly lower percentage of housing units that were built after the year 2000. So not very many housing units built after 2000, and a very high percentage of housing units that were built before 1939. So coupling those together, you might say, wow, we've got some old housing stock, right? We've got some things to work on. If you looked at those comparisons, I know you can't read this chart, but I will tell you what it says is that the housing units built in Butte-Silver Bow in 2000 or later is 8.8%. In the state of Montana, that's 26%. And the housing units built in 1939 or earlier in Butte-Silver Bow is almost 40%, and in the rest of Montana, that's 13.2. So it really does tell us we have a very aging housing stock that might have overall diminishing quality. Some other takeaways that are unique to Butte-Silver Bow. Butte-Silver Bow has what we would call a vacancy rate in the area of 1,500 to 2,000 units. Now that sounds like we have a lot of open units for people to live in, right? But what that means is, doesn't necessarily translate, is that those conditions of those units is unlivable. So those units may be vacant, but they are not up to any sort of standard of living. And so that physical condition assessment that's compiled through the Department of Revenue shows that over 42.4% of our properties are average, with 21.6% being assessed at fair or below. So while we may have vacancies, they're not livable. This next slide talks about the percent change in rent and home value and income in Butte-Silver Bow. And I don't, again, no shock to anyone in this room that the median sales price has definitely increased at a far greater rate than our median household income. So just saying that the affordability has definitely changed in our community. So our housing needs assessment, called out some of those major factors, and then we went into some community engagement and really reaching into the community to see what people felt and what they knew about housing in their community. We conducted 32 stakeholder interviews over a few days. We did a housing survey, a housing needs survey in the community with over 500 responses that came back to us. A housing vision workshop that was very well attended. It was held at Butte Brewing, and it was awesome to see the community come out for that. And then we held multiple meetings with the housing committee that I mentioned earlier for their feedback and takeaway on our findings as we moved through the process. Some of the themes that we heard at the stakeholder interviews: rising housing costs, lack of availability of housing, housing condition and aging, the growth that we've seen in the area, and the maintenance and appearance of some housing, and talking about our zoning code and code enforcement in terms of community enrichment kind of issues was one of the main topics we heard about. In our surveys, those 583 people, 67% of those respondents have lived in Butte-Silver Bow for over 10 years, so they've had some time here in the community to kind of understand what's happening and going on. Those surveys, the takeaways were talking about barriers and obstacles to housing. There's a concern about lack of quality and affordability of the housing options. The results overwhelmingly showed us encouragement to build more homes in our urban areas and to rehabilitate existing buildings. 2/3 of the respondents chose some form of rehabilitation as their highest priority in housing for Butte-Silver Bow. We had 57 people attend our housing visioning workshop, and in this visioning workshop we talked about and used the place types that were identified in the comprehensive plan as a guide for the discussion with our groups. And so we're trying to link those things together, which makes all the sense, right? If you're going to plan, make your plans work together. Our housing plan came up with 8 different goals, and we came up with strategies underneath these goals. But of the 8 goals, we want to increase our number of housing units available by 2,000 units by 2040. Increase affordable housing options and ensure all low-income residents have equal access. Improve and maintain our existing housing stock. Coordinate our land uses to allow increased density and mixed-use developments near our major employment centers. Preserve and renovate historical properties in Uptown Butte to be used as housing. We want to grow awareness of resources and educational opportunities around housing in Butte-Silver Bow, and ensure that we're reaching our housing goals in collaboration with our housing developers, other agencies, and our nonprofits. And then support all of our local efforts to solve homelessness on all fronts if we're able to. I don't know if we can ever really solve homelessness, but at least work on it. And the strategies that were developed, I'll just go through these quickly. I won't read everything to you, but we need to amend the development code to allow for a greater degree of flexibility in housing development, and we are currently working on that, as you are all aware. The next strategies are to zone for higher density housing near transit stops, place of employment, higher education facilities, pursue partnerships with developers and housing agencies and nonprofits, explore different funding opportunities, encourage redevelopment and adaptive reuse of historic buildings in Uptown, We're going to try to encourage maintenance of existing housing stock, provide permanent supportive housing, and increase housing affordability for low-income populations, identify and execute land transfers to supply additional land for new affordable housing development, develop a pre-approved ADU program was one of the strategies, communicate with residents and connect them with resources, trying to figure out how we're going to get that done, but that's something that we can start doing right away. And you may ask, how are we going to get all this done with our housing committee and then our existing staff? We did identify the need to hire a housing coordinator for Butte-Silver Bow to help coordinate and lead these efforts. This is something that currently falls between our offices of planning and community development, and for us to work on these strategies together, it would be very beneficial for us to have a coordinator on staff to help us with this. And so those are what we've worked on, and now that we have a plan, and if we get it to be adopted as part of the comprehensive plan, we have a lot of work to do. And so we have implementation, the next part of this. And so that's where the rubber hits the road, right? Where we have to start identifying how we'll get these things done. And if you look at that housing implementation matrix, almost on every single line of the lead, it's either the planning department or the community development department or the housing committee. And that is our role, and that's what we need to work on. But we are gonna dive into it with that housing committee and work towards it. But I will be, just in case anybody has a question, I will be asking to look at hiring that housing coordinator in this next year's budget. We'll see how that pans out. I know I have Mr. O'Neill's vote. He's just smiling. Anyway, we will be working on that because there is a lot of work to do. We're excited to start working on that, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Burns, so on some of the goals, I think maybe half or a little more seem more private development than government. Can you just kind of speak on that, how you can influence private development?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. So our role would be to be a support or liaison role with any private development that may happen, or to encourage private development in public-private partnerships to ensure affordability happens in a housing development. That could go the route of the local government providing property or land to the housing development, or providing infrastructure to the housing development through grants or other sources of funding through tax increment financing, depending on the district that it might be located in, where we could encourage and partner with private development to bring in those housing units at an affordable living rate. So.
Great, thank you. Mr. Daly? Question on a lot of communities. Mr. Daly, can you turn on your mic?
A lot of communities are having issues with like the VRBOs or the Airbnbs, and they're kind of counter to the affordability. I didn't hear or see anything that in this plan. Can you address that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Daly and members of the commission. We did ask that question on our surveys, and it was not flagged as something that was an issue in our community at this time. And so we don't feel like it's having a major influence in Butte on the availability of housing. We saw more of a spike in that when we had a great influx of people looking for rental units in relation to film. And that definitely had some impacts of people paying more than the going rate for rent, but that has completely settled down again. So we have not seen that impact in Butte.
My point is though, is if it's happening in other places, eventually it's gonna happen here. And if we don't build it into the plan, it will or could be a problem. We had a spike in it when the film industry was crazy here, and now it's settled down. But Could that come back next year? We don't know.
Right.
So I'm just saying, I think it needs to be in the plan.
Mr. Chairman, may I address that question? Mr. Daly, this is a matter that the planning department staff has been contending with in many of our discussions with our contractor on the rewriting of the zoning ordinance. In particular, I believe over the course of the last year, year and a half, Airbnbs or VRBOs are required to receive a special use permit from the planning or the zoning board of adjustment in order to operate in Silver Bow County. We are seeing 2 to 3 of those per month, and we are hoping to address those issues as it relates to the zoning ordinance as a way to proactively approach this problem and ensure that we're not constraining supply to a degree that would impact housing costs in the community.
Thank you. I guess I need to get educated on how that might possibly be enforced.
Chairman Steitzer, a member Daly, we are currently monitoring VRBO and Airbnb listings on websites when we are able to capture them, and then we do reach out to those persons and try to bring them into compliance by coming before the board for a special use permit. We can't, of course, capture everything, but we are doing what we can to ensure that those that are operating are in compliance with the requirements, particularly for health and safety.
Thank you.
Mr. O'Neill?
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks, Karen, for the presentation. I have a question, like how many different hats does your departments wear? Meaning, 'cause you guys got your hands in a lot of stuff, and I asked that question because in support of hiring a housing coordinator, because with the grief the county gets, we don't need any more county employees, right? But there's certain things that just get missed out because you can only do so many things. So,
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill and the commission. Yeah, our department does wear a lot of hats, and so I don't really know how to count them all, but we are involved in economic and community development for the city county. We administer 4 different economic development districts. We also are involved in many different grant applications and grant writing. We are involved with our local continuum of care that deals with homelessness, poverty, and mental health. We're part of the Mental Health, Behavioral Health Strategic Alliance, and we're also trying to build a Greenway Trail. We help work on land sales, land transfers. Yeah, we do a lot of different things with a small staff. So we've over the last few years, we've been successful in working on hiring a behavioral health coordinator, help us take on some of that behavioral health things, and that's been great. But there's a lot that comes through our department. Oh, historic preservation as well. Should add that. Oh, parking no longer is under community development. I'm happy to report. But except for not getting to interact with member Riley.
We appreciate all your efforts, Ms. Burns.
Thank you.
Any questions of the board? All right. Oh, one more, Mr. O'Neill.
thank you, Chairman. Appreciate it. I just again the plans that come about, right? It seems like every plan that comes through is like, oh my God, another plan. I just feel like that in the last couple of years since I've been on, I feel like we're trying to follow the plans, and I hope this one keeps it going. And I commend you guys and all your staff for doing that. It's hard for the community to see a lot of the efforts because everybody wants to wake up tomorrow and have everything be done. And unfortunately, we've had a lot of time. We have had a lot of lapse in time where we've missed out on. I don't know if we've missed out. Maybe I'm not saying we weren't doing anything. It's just like we have a long way to catch up. So I just hope that I guarantee you're going to hear Commissioner Fisher say, I hope we don't put this plan on the shelf. So I just like to bring that point up, and again, commend your office and all your guys' staff for keeping these things moving. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. If I may, just real quick, I want to let you all know that this plan has already resulted in helping us receive additional funding in our community to address affordable housing. We used the draft plan to help us apply for renovation money for Aspen Place Apartments. That was a CDBG funded grant, $750,000 to work on siding and window and roof replacement and repair. So this plan helped us get that done. That's a partnership with Butte Affordable Housing. And then we also were successful in receiving a $1.4 million grant from the Home ARP program, and that's it was related to the recovery funds, but that home program comes through the state of Montana, and that will be building permanent supportive housing units for our homeless population, our identified fuse population. And so this plan, even though it was a draft at the time, it has already helped us secure funding and helping us move forward with some solutions that were they're called out as strategies and goals in the plan. So it's a working plan already, but I appreciate your comments, and yes, we do not want it to sit on the shelf. We want it to be implemented and be a living document that we continue to update and change.
It's great to hear. Congratulations. If there are no more questions, we can move on to the second agenda item. All right, second agenda item is an application by Butte-Silver Bow Resilient Butte Steering Committee to amend the official Butte-Silver Bow Comprehensive Plan by adopting Butte-Silver Bow Safety, Health, and Resiliency Plan, or SHARP, as an amendment, as an addendum to the appendix. At this time, we'll hear a staff report.
Chairman Steitzer, members of the committee. This is a proposal by the Butte-Silver Bow Resilient Butte Steering Committee for the Safety, Health, and Resiliency Plan. This comprehensive plan amendment application proposes to adopt the Butte-Silver Bow SHARP plan as an addendum to the appendix of the Butte-Silver Bow Comprehensive Plan. In order to best guide future development in Butte-Silver Bow, it's essential for the comprehensive plan to align with the community plans to achieve comprehensive development of the community. The Butte-Silver Bow SHARP plan was finalized in March of 2024. The plan addresses the escalating challenges posed by climate change and identified goals supporting sustainable development, resilience, and resident well-being as it relates to natural resources, infrastructure, and environmental management. The document focuses on partnerships among the local government and community partners to leverage the innovation and research occurring in Butte-Silver Bow to enhance energy efficiency and promote sustainable practices. Adopting the SHARP plan into the appendix of the Butte-Silver Bow Comprehensive Plan would encourage alignment and cohesion of goals, planning, and implementation efforts enabled by the plan. Montana Code Annotated states that a planning board may propose and a governing body may adopt additional elements of a growth policy in order to fulfill the purpose of this chapter. And should they be determined to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, they may be incorporated as an appendix. The vision statement of the comprehensive plan details principles and objectives of future land use goals in Butte-Silver Bow, against which consistency with the Butte-Silver Bow SHARP plan shall be evaluated. The SHARP plan is an example of such a plan as it identifies natural resources inherent to the quality of life accustomed to our region and discusses strategies for sustaining those elements in the long term through responsible and sustainable management. Butte-Silver Bow's natural resources, geography, and water resources are highlighted in the 2020 Comprehensive Plan, and the SHARP plan presents strategies for sustaining these assets for current and future generations. The Butte-Silver Bow SHARP plan was developed through community outreach and stakeholder involvement, and the document was developed in large part by consultants Water and Environmental Technologies in collaboration with the Resilient Butte Steering Committee. In addition to these groups, meetings and focus groups were conducted to gather additional public input to inform the report. The comprehensive plan outlines 7 main principles in its vision statement, which are designed to guide goals, policies, and implementation measures. Staff will review the comprehensive plan's principles below as they relate to the contents of the SHARP plan. We have evaluated the enhancement to community character and the reinforcement of diverse and unique sense of place in each community throughout the county, paying special mind to the pristine landscapes, clean water, and fresh air that our residents are accustomed to and that impact their quality of life. Respect for Butte-Silver Bow's heritage while embracing change. Maintaining access to recreational assets for residents and visitors alike. Sustaining affordability and equity in housing choice and access for all residents. Providing economic opportunity through innovation, enhancing Butte-Silver Bow's economy by thinking outside the box. Promote growing wisely into the future by using what exists today to support growth. Ensuring a clean and healthful environment for all residents, regardless of age, gender, economic status, or where you live in Butte-Silver Bow. Based on the written findings, planning staff recommends approval of Comprehensive Plan Amendment Gen AMD, General Plan Amendment 24-2, to adopt the Butte-Silver Bow Sharp Plan as an appendix of the Butte-Silver Bow Comprehensive Plan. And I'll now turn over the presentation to Water and Environmental Technology staff, Stephen Coe and Megan Terry.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, board, Mr. Chairman and the board. Yeah, so Julia said it very well, kind of what brought us there. Can you move to the next slide? So, what is a sustainability, health, and resiliency plan? Well, it's really just a climate action plan. We chose the wording resilient and sustainability on purpose, so we didn't get into a negative conversation with people just by the word climate. That seems to really ping people. So through this process, we had multifaceted. We include public engagement, development of local partnerships, assessment of local climate vulnerability and risk, greenhouse gas emissions inventory, and as well as developing strategy and action items. So this all started back in May 22 with an initial survey put out by EcoAdapt, which was pre to an EcoAdapt workshop that took place here in Butte, which had a number of community members associated with it. One of the outcomes from that was the recommendation to form a resiliency committee within Butte to create a plan, this plan that we're here talking about today. So this was formed with a partnership sponsoring from Butte-Silver Bow, Montana Tech, and NCAT, all got together and took in various community members to be part of this group. The group was formed. We started collecting data. Midway through that, I was part of this Resilient Butte committee, and we decided to hire a firm. We put out an RFP and ultimately hired my firm, WET, to do this. I did stay out of it. Julia can attest to that. I was not part of the selection committee for that. So we from that we released a survey out to the community. Excuse me. Had media interviews. We were on TV, radio, newspaper. We attended the Folk Fest and did a climate stories and panel up there. It was really cool. I don't know, do we have a picture of the board? Yeah, the string board we had. And so the string board was kind of insane. There was so much on there that by the end of the Folk Fest, we actually couldn't see what was written below it. So we had to very carefully go through there and dissect what actually people were saying. But it's a good way to get people interacting with it and thinking about it and looking at it. We held some community workshops, and then that long time between September and April, we pulled the plan together and ran it through places. The EcoAdapt workshop is partnered with Virginia Tech, so we actually had them review the Sharp plan. They came back and had very few edits. Some of them basically just that we spelled eco-adapt correctly and throughout the the plan. Next slide, please. So through this, in the community priorities, through the surveys and the workshops, we identified four primary areas of concern, which the plan focuses on. They're public health, energy. I think it'll probably pop in if you, nope. Anyway, public health, energy, contaminated lands, and water were our areas that we focused on, and that's really evident in the plan. And I think you're next, right, Megan? Or is that going to do? Okay.
A big part of completing this type of plan is understanding what the current situation is in a place like Butte-Silver. What is the status of, kind of our interaction with the climate, and that's particularly pertaining to greenhouse gases. What does the community emit, and where do those emissions come from? And then kind of how do we look at where those emissions are to identify strategies that can make the largest impact. So through ICLEI, we were able to gain access to a tool called ClearPath, which allowed us to start gathering data, making requests to partners within the community. Northwest Energy was a huge one, and we were able to get direct measurements of all the energy consumed in the county through them for the 3 years we were looking at, which was huge for being able to complete those portions. We examined information from the landfill to look at solid waste numbers. I was able to gain access to some tools through ICLEI that let me project emissions from vehicles on the roads here, which was huge and quite complicated. So we actually were able to get a relatively detailed picture of what emissions look like in Butte-Silver in the 2019, 2020, 2021 period. So if we go to this next slide, we can see this cloud here in the top right. That's the total megatons of CO2 and CO2 equivalents emitted in Butte-Silver by our calculation methods. There's a couple gaps in the data where we were not able to quite get everything that we needed, but we were able to extrapolate where we could, and we were able to get this inventory that met with these standards for compliance with international protocols. So when you look at what the picture of where those emissions come from within the county, most of that is going to be coming from residential, industrial, and commercial energy consumption, both natural gas and electricity. And when we look at how those emissions break down, you can see that within the state of Montana, on average, we're generating a lot of electricity through renewables. But here in Butte-Silver, we're actually emitting pretty significantly, especially through industrial sources. When you see that breakdown, industrial emitters here are putting out quite a bit of emissions in a given year. When we look at transportation, we're pretty much right on line with the community you would expect. A lot of these emissions come through people just passing through on the highway. Those emissions count. If you're entering the county, leaving the county, and don't even stop, your emissions during that time still count. So there's quite a significant contribution from transportation emissions within the county. And then also the solid waste. And the solid waste was one that we're not quite the same as other communities. I would say this is a little bit unusual. When you look at the population versus the tonnage of waste generated per year, it's really started to accelerate, and that's a major source of emissions. About almost 20% of emissions are actually just coming from the landfills, which is quite a large number for a community like this one. So I think that's all on the ICLEI stuff.
And I'm Megan Terry with Water and Environmental Technologies. So I did bring up a copy, if anyone's interested in flipping through. This is a copy of the full plan, and inside of it, we did do a lot of public outreach and public engagement. Like Stephen was talking about here, we did go up to the Folk Fest. We did a climate stories event up there and really listened to the way that people related to climate change over time. You hear a lot of people talking about like what the weather patterns used to be like in their youth, how it's changed, how does that impact what we do in Butte, is it impacting our economy? You know, are we losing money for recreation because things are changing? Are we able to start diving into some of that and actually like start looking at how we can make sustainability choices now to actually help out in the long run with Butte-Silver Bow? So this is just a list of some of the engagement outreach strategies we had. Here's a picture of that board that Stephen was talking about. We actually worked with an AmeriCorps Vista member, and she helped us put together some of these activities that we would do at different events throughout town. And then another thing that we've been working on that I think is somewhat notable, we've been presenting this plan a lot at different conferences. And I think that's important because we're starting to hear more and more like, wow, Butte is like really ahead of this. And we're getting some really positive feedback for what the community is doing, what the potential for this is. And for a community our size, it's very unusual. So while we were presenting last year at the Montana Planners Association, there was actually a regional or a national person there, and they asked us, they said, we haven't seen this approach before, can you write a pass memo? So we're in the process right now of writing a pass memo for the American Planning Association because the strategy outlined in this is so unique from what they've typically seen. And on the next slide here, I'll kind of tell you why that is. So one of the things that we noticed across planning documents, and I think we kind of talked about it in the last presentation, is a lot of times we hear, we plan documents and then they sit on shelves. Like why, you know, where is that missing piece from going from planning to implementation? So we started looking at planning documents across Butte-Silver Bow to see what the connection was between successful planning documents and ones that maybe weren't as successful. And we started looking and seeing if there were common threads. And one of the things we found was funding was a huge piece that was missing during the planning stage. So we made a big effort during this process of actually outlining funding mechanisms and then simultaneously applying for funding as the plan was still being written. We know through the EPA there was actually $2 billion recently allocated for climate justice planning. There's another $2 billion that's coming out through the line same way. So we knew that we had to get ahead of that. If Butte-Silver Bow wants to capture that money, we needed to go ahead and actually start applying for some of that funding ahead of the plan actually being formally adopted. So to date, we've actually applied for, I believe, 6 different grants. And those range anywhere from the ones that were identified by Resilient Butte for the Stodden Park tree. They're going to be doing a tree abatement project and doing some tree plantings to renew some of the trees down there. Trevor's working on that one. That was a $250,000 project. That one is, Butte was only one of, I believe, 2 or 3 communities in the state of Montana that got that funding. And because we were kind of watching and tracking as that was coming out. Another one that was awarded was the drought management plan through the DNRC. That's a $50,000 grant to do a drought management plan specifically for the community. As we were doing some of the public outreach strategies, we were hearing from some of our watersheds that, like, for instance, the Big Hole, you know, they were saying it's really hard when our farmers are having to go into like reducing how much water they're able to allocate. And then we drive to Butte and we see people watering their lawns. And it's like, oh man, this is a really big disconnect. So the drought management plan application is really focusing on trying to address things like that. Some of the other funding that we've also been looking at, without having a climate action plan, we wouldn't have been able to apply for $75,000 through the Department of Energy for the EECBG money. One of the specific requirements is they want to see a climate action plan. So without having this plan, that wouldn't have been able to be as easily obtained. And so even though this was in draft form, we were able to go after that. There's a current application in for a solar project to get money to do a solar project to then reduce energy costs to consumers through Butte-Silver Bow. So, and then with that, I guess any questions associated with that?
Great presentation. Well done on your efforts. Any questions from the board?
I have a question.
Mr. Garf? Mr. Garf, can you turn your mic?
I think it is on.
Oh, sorry, your light's not on. Thank you.
Yeah, if the light doesn't work in Ori's seat. So you worked on this with the planning department, and some of these things are being implemented through planning, or how? Like, what's the liaison between Butte-Silver Bow County and this plan, and how will the county moving forward be able to use this data that you've come up with? Because I saw in there some really valuable information about solid waste and energy usage.
I'll address at least part of that. The planning department was actually on Resilient Butte. Julia sat on the committee, so she's been plugged in since day one on that, and fully supportive, helped write and review the entire document. So as far as that's concerned, they're plugged in and fully involved and want to be part of it. And how are we going to use this? The best way to use it is much like the housing plan that we just saw. Each entity that was a sponsor of this has a set of key metrics that they've been presented as targets to go for and projects, and so that's where the focus would be. The solar project that Megan mentioned is we're trying to put through a grant through Northwestern Energy, put solar on Firehouse 1. It's a lot of open space, a spot for it to do it, and ultimately will save Butte-Silver Bow some money. So, you want to expand on that?
I was going to say, I'll kind of tag on top of that too. One of the things that we did in the plan is break out. We were hearing a lot of public comment, like people, individuals wanted to know how can we help. And so there's actually a portion of the plan that individuals, if you wanted to go ahead and take sustainable steps in your own home, we actually have outlined strategy and do check mark items that you can actually work on in your own home. In addition to that, then we have the municipal strategies, which are the city, county government kind of different strategies to try to address the water, energy, and public health strategies in here. In addition to that, since Montana Tech was one of our partners, we actually did a strategy to work with Montana Tech and came up with a host of action items that included Montana Tech as well.
Thank you. I have a follow-up. So I guess I don't understand. So what is Resilient Butte? Is it a volunteer organization or?
Yep, so Resilient Butte was formed, so the EcoAdapt workshop, this was a grant that was put in by the city. EcoAdapt is a partner that comes out to communities. Butte-Silver Bow was chosen as one of, I believe, 7 communities in the U.S. to do this strategic workshop. From there, they kind of gave outline for how to form this committee. The committee then, I believe, was appointed by Butte-Silver Bow in cooperation with the NCAT, the National Center for Appropriate Technology, and Montana Tech. So we had representation from not only Butte-Silver Bow, we had representation from like CFWEP for our watersheds. We had someone from Northwestern Energy for utilities. And then we had a few different people from the community that were on the board. All in all, I believe we had 10 steering committee members.
So representative from the Council of Commissioners.
Yep, Council of Commissioners was also included in that, so.
Okay, thank you. I have another follow-up. So is Resilient Butte applying for these grants on behalf of the county, or is the county applying for them?
The county's applying for them.
Okay.
We as WET and Resilient Butte have assisted in most cases, but they're the ones applying and the ones doing lion's share of the work.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may clarify, the Resilient Butte Steering Committee is an ad hoc committee that is in the Chief Executive's office, seeing opportunity with the Inflation Reduction Act and the infrastructure bill that would necessitate a climate action plan being in place. So that was really the outset of that. And the share of participation being from Butte-Silver Bow and the Community Development Office and the Planning Department and Reclamation Division. also participating with experts from those other entities to bring the best minds to the table in order to ascertain those opportunities. In addition to the two projects that Megan had mentioned and Stephen had mentioned, we have been working with students at Montana Tech on solar design elements that can be integrated into recreational spaces. So really trying to bridge those opportunities, but also bringing students that are at the leadership roles today, learning about, you know, best practice to allow them to help make shape in the community for these kinds of initiatives to take place. So it's not just big policy goals or our grant writing and what we seek in terms of grant awards to the county, but also integrating people as participants in the overall sustainability and maintenance of our community. So it's kind of a three-prong solution.
Thank you for clarifying.
Any other questions from the board?
Same work, and I got a question. On the solar that you said, is this large-scale solar, or you were saying smaller ones, or what, or small solar deals? Because we had a large scale that seemed nobody was interested in.
It's small-scale solar. It's the solar that fits within current legislation in Montana and would qualify for net metering.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions? All right, I've erred on my procedure, so I skipped our adoption on the strategic housing plan. So we'll circle back to that. At this time, we will take any motions for the safety, health, and resilient plan to be adopted as an addendum to the comprehensive plan. So, Mr. Garf, were you making a motion?
Yes, I move to, we're adopting the SHARP plan first?
Sharp.
Okay, I move to adopt the SHARP plan as part of the comprehensive plan.
Great. Is there a second? All right. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All right. Carries unanimously. Great. I will circle back to the housing strategic plan. I apologize for that. We are looking for a motion to adopt the housing strategic plan as addendum to the comprehensive plan.
I will move to adapt the Silver Bowl housing plan.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Garf. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. My apologies. All right. All right, thank you all. We will move on to our third agenda item, which is an application for a 5-lot commercial subdivision by 3300 Harrison Avenue LLC, represented by WET. The proposed subdivision is located at 3300 Harrison Avenue, legally described as documented. At this time, we'll hear a staff presentation.
Chairman Steitzer and members of the committee, we are here to hear Subdivision 23-7, a preliminary plat of the Cornerstone Plaza minor subdivision, which proposes to create 5 new parcels within an existing tract of land. This is a first minor subdivision as the parent parcel was not dedicated by subdivision. The proposal provides for 5-lot commercial minor subdivision with the lots ranging in size from 2.38 acres to 6.56 acres. You can see the preliminary plat here. The site is located at 3300 Harrison Avenue. It is between just south of the Lescavar Motors building and then north of Butte GM. You can see the aerial photograph here. As many of you will know from driving on Harrison Avenue, that site has changed considerably over the course of the project's duration. The location is currently zoned C2 and has an R1S zone and an R1 zone just to the east of the property. The R1S zone also includes the Burt Mooney Airport. You can see that lots 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are arranged to provide access to all parcels from Harrison Avenue via 2 routes. This is the preliminary plat. We also can see here utility easements reflected on the north, south, east, and west of each lot. Side yard lines and a stormwater management easement, which is just to the east of the plat, which is where the subdivision stormwater will be collected in order to facilitate development of each lot. Here are some photographs of the site pre-modification looking northeast, southeast. This morning, you can see the considerable dirt work that has taken place at the location. And then this is a straight view of the location from just Google Earth. So we will now review the criteria evaluated. So in terms of effects on local services, we will start with water and sewer. Butte-Silver Bow Public Works has verified that there is adequate water and sewer capacity in this area. As we expect the applicant to file a municipal facilities exemption request in order to connect to water and sewer from the municipal source. Water will be sourced to the site as proposed from the north of the property. You can see the water main that runs through that parcel entitled Butte Harrison Pit LLC. And the sanitary system will use gravity flow to the existing main and will be designed at the time of construction and permitting. In terms of roads, we anticipate 7,579 daily trips to be generated by this subdivision. The analysis of this traffic plan or traffic analysis indicates that a traffic signal is warranted, and discussions between Butte-Silver Bow and Montana Department of Transportation have occurred, and we have agreed that installation is warranted at this location. The installation of the traffic signal will be done at the cost of the owner subdivider. The signal would be placed at the primary driveway to the property, which is reflected as a public access easement on the preliminary plat. I'm just going to jump back there so you can see that. The public access easement and the signalized intersection will take place right here, and it would be entry to provide access to lots 1, 4, 2, and 5. As the traffic signal will be placed at the new Cornerstone driveway and Harrison Avenue, traffic mitigation will be necessary at the intersection of Meadowlark and Harrison Avenue, which will be required to ensure appropriate traffic flow along Harrison Avenue and to provide access to the site. And prior to installation, both the traffic plan or the traffic signal and the mitigation plan will be approved by Montana Department of Transportation. The primary access easement will be a signalized intersection allowing those traveling north and south on Harrison Avenue to access the site, and meets the Table 1 requirements for a 4-lane collector without parking, measuring 46 feet back-to-back curb width. And the easement provides access to lots 1, 2, 4, and 5. A secondary entrance is proposed for the north of the property, which would allow right in and right out for those that are traveling north on Harrison Avenue. And this particular access point meets the Table 1 requirements for a 60-foot access easement with 2 lanes and a 27-foot back-to-back curb width. The easement provides legal and physical access to lots 1 and 3. I wanted to take some photographs to illustrate to you that portion of the site that I could not access. So Forrest at Wet provided some photographs of the east side of the lot. We did talk in the staff report about the slope stability because this is a open cut permit that has been approved by the Department of Environmental Quality to show that the grading plan will incorporate best management practices to hold the stormwater on site for retention and detention, and that the slopes are reasonably positioned and do grade slowly down to the east. In terms of emergency services, the subdivision is not anticipated to have adverse effect on the fire or police department as they currently are serving this location. The subdivision will be non-residential in nature and is not anticipated to require schools or busing, as no residential components are associated with the site at this time. And in terms of power and telecommunications, infrastructure is in place to serve the addition and the new commercial lots. The applicant will be required to fulfill all comments related to public infrastructure that have been provided by Northwestern Energy. And the applicant has included utility easements on the front, rear, and side lot lines to allow for connection to water, sewer, electrical, gas if necessary, and indicates that they will not be placed under buildings, which was an express comment of Northwestern Energy to ensure that the placement of buildings on the lots themselves would not be over the top of any infrastructure to allow for ongoing maintenance and replacement if necessary at a point in the future. Effects on natural environment. The subdivision does not contain any regulatory floodplain, nor are there water features present on the property. As you could see in the aerial photograph, there are potential wetlands that you could visibly see that were evaluated by the Army Corps of Engineers and determined to be isolated and non-jurisdictional waters. The property was once a borrow pit and was depleted of its topsoils and vegetation prior to 1980. As part of this project, the site was backfilled to meet the grade of Harrison Avenue through an approved open cut permit. As part of the evaluation, geotechnical investigations were performed to indicate the presence of high groundwater and some elastic silt soils. The site has been reconstructed as part of an open cut permit to fill the low area and improve overall safety for access. I wanted to make a point of letting you know that the steep slopes that will be created through the cut-fill portion of the property will be finished in accordance with permanent erosion and sediment control design guidelines. The property is not anticipated to impact agricultural lands due to the urban location. No agricultural waterways extend through the property, nor does it produce timber or crops. Therefore, there is no anticipated loss to either industry expected due to this subdivision. In order to reduce noxious weeds on the property, the applicants must sign a weed management plan with the weed board, and a weed management plan has been provided in the application to be reviewed. We also anticipate no impacts on wildlife or habitat and have confirmed there is no expected impact based on the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks evaluation of the proposal. Effects on public health and safety. All lots are serviceable by Butte-Silver Bow water and sanitary sewer. On-site stormwater detention and retention are planned. I wanted to point out in this photograph, this is the north section of the property that is between just an ownership parcel and then the Cornerstone proposed subdivision. And many people have asked me about this particular location and will it be filled in? And the reason that it is not proposed to be filled in is that there is existing water main located in this particular area. And if we were to further bury it, it would make maintenance into the future more challenging. And so we are leaving this particular area exposed. And if we have any questions on the proposed plan for vegetation, we could confirm during the question portion with Forrest. Sidewalk, curb, and gutter are standard improvements required of subdivisions and commercial development occurring in the C2 zone, which are planned throughout the development. All new approaches, driveways, and signals will be designed to Montana Department of Transportation standards using guidance from the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices and subject to both Butte-Silver Bow and Montana Department of Transportation approval. The subdivision will be served by Butte-Silver Bow Emergency Services, and each building will be required to meet the adopted fire code requirements of the state of Montana and Butte-Silver Bow. Based upon staff evaluation of the subdivision, this subdivision satisfies zoning and subdivision requirements. Staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat of Cornerstone Plaza Minor Subdivision subject to the following conditions, which I will read. In recommending approval, conditional approval, or denial of the subdivision application and preliminary plat, the planning board shall base its recommendation on compliance of the subdivision and preliminary plat on the above evaluated criteria. The application and plat and adopted local zoning a comprehensive plan. The subdivision complies with the provisions of the C2 zoning classification and intent of the 2020 comprehensive plan and satisfies the criteria outlined in the Butte-Silver Bow subdivision regulations. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the Cornerstone Plaza minor subdivision subject to the following conditions. This preliminary plat is good for 3 years. At the end of this period, the governing body may, at the request of the subdividing entity, extend this time frame. The final plat shall conform to the requirements of the Butte-Silver Bow subdivision regulations and requirements of the Montana Subdivision and Platting Act. This includes certification by the treasurer that taxes are paid and current. Prior to applying for final plat approval, the applicants shall submit and receive approval of the municipal facilities exemption indicating adequate capacity of municipal infrastructure to serve the new lots. Prior to applying for final plat approval, the applicants shall submit the required documentation for review and secure written approval from the Butte-Silver Bow Public Works Department for the following public infrastructure. Compliance with all sections of Chapter 12.4, construction within public right-of-way, and the Butte-Silver Bow Municipal Code, including design specifications for the new access roads. Compliance with all sections of Chapter 13.04, wastewater treatment system of the Butte-Silver Bow Municipal Code. Compliance with all sections of Chapter 13.20, water systems regulations of the Butte-Silver Bow Municipal Code, including Chapter 13.24, main extensions and material specifications. In compliance with all sections of Chapter 13.32, stormwater management of the Butte-Silver Bow Municipal Code, including the Butte-Silver Bow Municipal Stormwater Engineering Standards. 5. Prior to applying for final plat approval, the applicant shall submit to the Montana Department of Transportation applications for all necessary permits and receive the required permissions associated with installation of approaches on Harrison Avenue, the design and installation of the signalized intersection at Harrison Avenue, and the primary access road to the subdivision, and a traffic mitigation plan for the intersection of Harrison Avenue and Meadowlark Lane. The applicants will be required to complete all the public infrastructure improvements, including but not limited to sanitary sewer, water, roads, curb, gutter, and fire hydrant installation as applicable prior to applying for final plat approval or enter into a subdivision improvement agreement. This agreement shall stipulate which type of security arrangements the subdividing entity elects to use and the time schedule proposed to accomplish the required improvements. The security guarantee shall be equal to the amount of the cost estimate to install infrastructure improvements plus 25%. The guarantee must be submitted to the planning department prior to filing the final plat with Butte-Silver Bow, clerk and recorder. This guarantee may be in the form of cash, surety bond, certified check, or some other guaranteed negotiable instrument. Prior to the release of the bond, as the as-built drawings for the infrastructure, including the location of the private utilities, shall be submitted as a condition of acceptance. Addresses will be assigned to the new lots by the planning department at the time the individual lot owners apply for building permits. Utility easements measuring 10 feet will be provided for along the front, side, and rear property lines for each lot per BSB subdivision regulations, section 11J. As required by the Butte-Silver Bow subdivision regulations, section 12L, a weed control plan shall be approved by the weed board prior to filing the final plat with the clerk and recorder. Also, as required, the applicant must submit a bond equal to the amount of money necessary to complete the approved weed control plan. This bond may be in the form of cash, surety bond, certified check, or some other guaranteed negotiable instrument.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. Would the applicant like to make any comments?
Sweet, I found the button. Forrest J., engineer with Water Environmental Technologies, chairman and planning board in Julia. Thank you. The developer, I'm representing the developer Cornerstone Management Group, 3300 LLC, Dave Leone, and we concur with the staff report that Julia presented tonight, and the conditions of approval, we fully intend on meeting those as well. I'm available to answer any questions you may have on the development. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe to Ms. Crane or to the applicant, can you describe what a municipal facilities exemption is?
Yeah, so the chairman, the municipal facilities exemption is basically a vehicle in which to obtain the COSA for basically removal of sanitary restrictions on the properties. Instead of DEQ reviewing the subdivision and preliminary plat in full, they basically defer to the municipality because the planning department has been reviewing the application, and that the subdivision is connecting to the municipal facilities of water and sewer, and also reviewing the stormwater plan that meets the Butte-Silver Bow stormwater engineering standards. Part of that is also that certifying that the capacity exists to accommodate the water and sewer services to this development. So it's a quick little form. We attach the plat, and basically Butte-Silver Bow representatives or their retained engineers would be signing that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board? All right, so this is a first minor subdivision, so it is not a public hearing, so I will not ask for proponents or opponents. So if there's no discussion from the board or questions, there is a recommended motion in the staff report, and we are recommending approval, conditional approval, or denial to the Council of Commissioners. If anyone would like to make a motion. Mr. Daly.
I will make a motion that we approve along with the conditions that the staff has outlined.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes our agenda items. Ms. Crane, is there any other business? No.
None this evening, Chairman Steitzer. I appreciate you all being here. Thank you very much. If you do have any questions, you can reach out to me. Happy to visit.
Great. All right, we'll move to adjourn. Great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, guys.